Retired cop, Navy veteran, businessman, and investor. It's the Captain Flavor Talk Time Show. The Captain has entered the room.
Hey everyone, this is Anthony Rivera, your host from the Captain Flavor Talk Time Show. Today is episode number 4. Do you need an accountant? So, do I need an accountant? It was a difficult decision for me when I first started out, because when I was a police officer, I used a tax preparer. It was just a guy that was at home and he had a little office and he would just prepare taxes. But then when I started to get into business and real estate, I started to think again, like, do I need an accountant, or can I just continue to use that at-home person to do my taxes? I was concerned at first to pay for an accountant because I was just worried that it would be really expensive and I wouldn't make any money from the business because I'd be giving all the money away to the accountant. But over time, I learned that I wouldn't be able to do it myself and I wouldn't be able to focus on my business. So I started to realize that maybe I need to find somebody. But like, why not go to those bookkeepers or one of those companies out there that just prepares taxes? You know, like why not go to those places, and why should you spend more money on an accountant? Well, today's episode is just going to be about that, and we're going to have a special guest, a great accountant from the Suffolk area of Virginia. He'll be here to talk to us and answer some questions about different things that accountants do. I'm really excited about it, and I'm sure all you listening will also be very excited about it. You're going to learn a lot, and we're all going to be very informed. Woo-wee! I love to hear that sound, because that means that our special guest is on the phone right now, Mr. Doug Bradshaw, a 22-year accountant working out of Robb, Bradshaw, and Rawls from Suffolk, Virginia.
Hey, Anthony, how you doing, buddy?
Great to hear from you. I just want to thank you for being our guest speaker on the Captain Flavor Talk Time Show. And I wanted to say, when I first started business, actually before I started business, when I was a police officer and then transferred over into business, and I had to decide whether to use an accountant or not, I was a little concerned. I wasn't sure if using an accountant was exactly what I needed. I thought maybe that I can just do the bookkeeping myself and handle all the accounting of the business. But after hearing the advice from other business owners and also from my own family, we decided to go with an accountant. And I just want to say that it's the best thing that I've ever done, because it allows me to focus on business and investing. So we invited you on the show because we had some questions that we had, and it'd be great if you can give your insight and your professional experience to answer them.
Absolutely. I would enjoy doing so. Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. So most of the people that are listening to the show are people that are future entrepreneurs that are just getting into business and investing. And this is kind of like to just guide them in the best direction possible so that they could be as successful as possible. So the first question is, why should a new business owner consider using an accountant? To answer that.
Absolutely. I would enjoy doing so. Absolutely. Thank you.
Great.
Well, off the top of my head, a couple things come to mind. Needless to say, the very first thing is to know whether the company is making money or not. Obviously, that's an important thing. That's what we all go into business for. So having a roadmap in the way of financial statements will help you determine whether the company is making money or if it's making the money that was anticipated, or in the worst case scenario, of course, that it's actually losing money. In that case, obviously, you need some answers. You want to know why it's losing money. So with an accountant, a good accountant, you're going to you should have a set of books that provides the basic financial statements, which of course is the balance sheet, the income statement, and in some cases the statement of cash flows. And those are beyond determining the income or loss of a business for a particular period. It's also a wonderful management tool, so that you can kind of pinpoint exactly where you're strong, and in more cases than not, more important, your weaker areas, the areas where you need to improve to ensure that the business is ultimately successful. A good set of books would be created by a good accountant, and again, that would help you fine tune. Is your revenue meeting expectations? Are you spending too much in payroll? Are utility or supply expenses? Are you spending too much in that section? And in some cases, you may not be spending enough. And if you're in a business where advertising is particularly important to driving customers to your business, you might look at that and see that you're just not putting the investment in a good advertising program that you know is going to be required to generate the revenue that the company needs to be successful. In addition to that, there are other types of filings that require an accountant or somebody that can do it, most often an accountant, and that would be things like determining what sales tax would be due, meals tax if appropriate, business license, personal property reports, things like that. A good accountant is going to be able to help a business owner with the filing and payment of all those things that, of course, are required. And then, of course, getting back to the income versus loss. As we all know, income tax is a component of how much income the company made. So a good accountant will have an accurate set of accounting records leading to a accurate tax return, ensuring that the business is not overstating income and hence paying more tax than it should be. And conversely, if the income is understated or you have a loss that is larger than what you would be legally entitled to take, you could be in a situation where you're audited by the IRS and it's determined that your income was underreported. And of course, that leads to not just income tax that's due that wasn't paid, and the IRS and states are going to be holding their hands out expecting their revenue. But in that case, it's usually going to happen far after the filing and payment due dates. Hence, the amount of tax that's owed is going to be compounded by interest and possibly penalties for late payment of the proper tax. Those are just a couple of things that come right out come to my mind. There's many others. If we sat down, we probably could make a real long list, much more comprehensive than what I've just talked about here in the last few minutes.
I see. My first business venture, we didn't even have any books, so there was no books to evaluate on the first business we did, and we kind of just shot by the hip. And I don't know if you remember, but like early on, it was discouraged to even get into that type of business because it was kind of hard to evaluate, and we weren't sure if it would be like a trend or something that just would be here for a year and then gone the next. But I completely understand, and it makes 100% sense to do that. So my next question is, what is a CPA?
Well, actually, that's a pretty good question because a lot of people that I come into contact are not sure. Probably the best way to incorporate what a CPA is not just to talk about what specifically makes a CPA, but also what's the difference between a CPA and just a bookkeeper or an accountant. And I don't mean to demean any of the people that we might be talking about here, because there's good ones and there's bad ones. But the bottom line is this: is pretty much anybody can call themselves an accountant. Just a little bit of an experience can maybe even make you a decent accountant. But with that, there's no real formal training. There's no experience necessarily, at least beginning, obviously. So there's really no control over what you're getting when you are hiring somebody that is that is just a bookkeeper or an accountant. And again, I want to emphasize there are some good ones out there. So it's not a hard and fast statement by any means, especially after some get a fair amount of experience. I've met many bookkeepers that do a good job, but getting back to your real question, what is a CPA? How that contrasts with the bookkeeper that I just described. A CPA, first of all, and we live in Virginia here, so obviously what I'm going to refer to is mainly the requirements of the state of Virginia. But pretty much all states require very similar requirements. So first of all, what are the requirements? And you start out with education. To be a CPA or certified public accountant, you have to have a 4-year degree with a minimum of 150 credit hours. Within the degree and the credit hours, you have to have the prerequisite courses, the various accounting. There's principles. There's intermediate. There's advanced accounting. You have tax classes, of course. You have courses on auditing financial statements. You have courses also on cost accounting, in addition to other types of accounting like nonprofit and fund accounting, governmental type accounting. They have a different way of keeping their books. But the bottom line is a CPA will have a college degree that requires all those different types of educational requirement. After you've attained your 4-year degree and acquired 150 credit hours, and mind you, generally speaking, 120 hours is what most bachelor's degree requires. So you can get a 4-year bachelor's degree and still not have enough college, successful completed college courses to become a CPA. So again, it does require 150 credit hours. So moving on from that, to become a CPA after you've attained the education that I've just described, you also have to take a 4-part, again, this is Virginia, a 4-part accounting test or tests that are related to accounting topics, again, auditing, tax, business management, things like that. And by the way, the testing that is required is very rigorous. In my example, or in my case, I should say, I studied after graduating from school and going to work for a public accounting firm. It took me a year's worth of studying to be in a position where I could sit for the exam. So yeah, absolutely. I have many attorneys that have told me that the testing requirements for the CPA exam is more difficult than taking the bar exam. Now, you hear stuff like that all the time, but I've had CPA/attorneys tell me that, and of course they should know because they've taken both tests. In addition to the accounting courses, we have to pass a rather complex ethics test. Obviously, as the name implies, we want to make sure that we understand what a ethical accountant would be, what some of the practices that we may practice in, and what others, and some of the others that we can't. Some of those there could be some conflicts of interest with clients, and in that case, we would be barred from performing a specific engagement they're looking at. But the bottom line is that it's not just the educational requirements that you look at as far as being a CPA, but we need to be ethical also, and of course, we prove that to the state by taking the ethics exam. And then the next step is getting experience. A CPA to become certified, or to become certified as a public accountant by the state, is also going to have a minimum, and again, Virginia requires a minimum of 2 years of experience working in a public accounting environment. There's other types of accounting, such as private, where you might work for a corporation on your own, not in a public accounting firm, and their experience requirements to become certified may be a little bit different, but generally speaking, you're looking at a couple of years of experience. And then on an ongoing basis, we are required to have a certain number of hours of continuing professional education each year. In the case of Virginia, we need to average on a rolling 3-year period 40 hours of continuing education per year. Per year, but it's on a rolling 3-year period, meaning there is a little bit of leeway, and the minimum that you can have during any one particular year is 20 hours. So to save any confusion, you have to have a minimum of 20 hours in any one particular year, but over a rolling 3-year average, you have to average 40 hours a year, meaning in that 3-year period, you have to have 120 hours of continuing education. If you meet all those requirements, you are then certified after submitting your application to the state. You are certified by the State Board of Accountancy to practice as a, quote, certified public accountant. So again, the CPA has educational requirements. It has testing requirements that you use to establish your proficiency in your knowledge of the accounting, tax, and so forth industry, and then ongoing experience in education carrying forward. That's basically what a CPA is required. That's how you become a CPA. And like I said when I started answering your question, that differs from a bookkeeper or just a quote accountant, in that they're not really required to have any experience, any continuing education, any original education in the field. So it's kind of buyer beware. But again, I have to emphasize there are some that are pretty darn good. But the end result is if you hire a CPA, you're going to get all of those others that I've described, and the chances of them being able to fulfill your needs obviously is going to be much better than would just a standard bookkeeper or accountant.
That was a great explanation, and so it makes sense for a new person just getting into investing in a business. It makes sense for them to seek out a CPA, I would think.
Well, I mean, I'm a CPA, so obviously I'm going to agree with you, but I truly believe, being objective, that I would come to that same conclusion. But I started answering your question, that's a great question when you ask what a CPA is, because a lot of people don't know. A lot of people will use CPA as just kind of an acronym meaning an accountant, and it's kind of thrown around rather loosely. So, yes, like I said, being a CPA, I'm going to strongly recommend somebody hire a CPA, even if it's not myself. But again, you'd expect me to say that.
Okay. So my last question is, why should a new business owner have an accountant prepare their tax returns instead of using one of those tax preparation chains that you see everywhere?
Well, also a very, very good question. The tax preparation services typically really cater to personal taxes more so than they do business taxes. So that's kind of the part A answer to your question. But going even a little bit further, the tax services they have their place and they fill it quite well. The place that they have really in the industry is doing tax returns that are broadly speaking, extremely simple. And simple is a comparative term because, as we all know, it's well documented how complex our tax system is, both on a state and a federal level. We've all heard, again, the stories about the federal tax code being volumes and volumes and literally tens of thousands of pages, and it's true. So back to the change, the preparation services, they really feel a need for particularly individuals and couples, joint returns that have a basic return. When I say a basic return, what I'm talking about is they have a job, so they have a W-2 or a few of them. They may not itemize at all. They take the standard deduction, and it's just a matter of determining what their taxable income is and using the tax tables to determine the proper tax on that income. It could even be a little bit more complicated by having what we call a itemized return. Instead of taking the standard deduction, your itemized deductions are larger than a standard deduction. So obviously, to maximize the deductions that you're allowed to take against income, we may use the itemized deductions. And of course, they're frequently referred to as Schedule A deductions, and that's because the Schedule A of the federal tax return is used to report these particular deductions. But going back to the tax services, they generally are going to do a decent job on just the basic itemized deductions, and they would be mortgage interest on your primary residence, real estate taxes, personal property tax, charitable deductions. And as long as you stay within that confine, they're going to do a pretty good job. They're going to get you in and out, and you're going to be fairly happy with their service. Now, as we all know, that's a big segment of the people requiring tax returns. But where CPA comes in is we're going to do the much more complicated. Your question was business, so I'm going to kind of shift gears and say that that's our expertise much more so than the change or the tax services. We're going to be able to do the business tax returns themselves, and then depending on the type of entity, whether it's a corporation, a subchapter S corporation, partnership, joint venture, sole proprietorship, all of those are different type of entities that require different forms, different types of tax, and where it's taxed could also come into play. Some of those entities that I just named are what we refer to as pass-through entities, and with a pass-through entity, they don't actually have income tax that is going to be charged at the entity level. And what I mean by that is the company itself, if it's a pass-through entity, is not going to pay income tax, but the owners of that company will pay the tax that the company on the income that the company generates. So again, those are going to be more complex issues that the tax preparation services are just not going to be apt or even able to start with the preparation of those type of returns.
I see. Well, thank you for joining us on the show, and we were really excited to have you, and your insight was just excellent, and I'm sure it would benefit a lot of new people that are just getting into business and real estate and other types of investments. So that concludes our episode, and I want to thank Doug Bradshaw from Robb, Scott, Bradshaw, and Rawls. That was a great talk. So please like us on Facebook and check out our website, and we'll talk to everyone later.